Miss Hale, please stay still. Don't open that door.
Marcus Reed was breathing like he'd been running for miles, even though he hadn't. The corridor on the 44th floor of Hale Global Tower was a glass and steel artery that usually hummed with quiet power. Tonight, it felt like the building was holding its breath. His radio was half dead in his fist, coughing up static like a dying engine. He swallowed, forcing his voice through the tightness in his throat. "Ms. Hale, please stay still." His words came out rough, urgent. "Don't open that door." In the darkness ahead, a woman's silhouette didn't flinch. Victoria Hale, the most powerful person in the building, turned her head just enough for her voice to cut through the corridor like a blade. "You're just security." Her tone was ice wrapped in velvet. "Do you think you know better than I do?" Marcus's chest rose and fell hard. Because it wasn't pride pushing him. It wasn't even courage. It was something simpler. A warning. A smell that didn't belong. Ozone. Sharp. Metallic. Like lightning trapped in fabric. Victoria's hand lifted toward the brushed steel handle. Marcus stepped forward without thinking. "Ms. Hale?" Her fingers touched the metal. And in that exact moment, the tower shut off. Not like a normal blackout, not like a storm. It went dark the way a body goes still when the soul is pulled out. The exit signs blinked once and died. The air conditioning stopped mid-breath. The distant hum of servers disappeared. Even the elevator lights vanished like they'd never existed. For 1 second, there was nothing. Then Marcus heard a thin, vicious sound in the black. Ch, 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 electricity looking for a place to bite. He lunged. "Back!" he shouted, but the darkness swallowed his voice. And somewhere deep beneath them, Hale Global Tower made a low mechanical groan, like a giant waking up angry. And then, silence. Engineered silence. And Marcus Reed, poor night shift guard and single father, realized something colder than the dark. Someone had wanted this. To understand why Marcus dared to speak to the woman who owned the sky above Manhattan, we have to rewind a few hours, back to when the only thing that felt off was something small. Just a smell. Just ozone on her coat. Marcus Reed always woke up before his alarm, not because he was disciplined, because peace didn't last long enough to trust it. Their apartment in Queens was small, warm only in the way a place becomes warm when someone you love is inside it. The radiator hissed like it had an attitude. Streetlight cut across the carpet like a pale ribbon. Marcus poured cereal into a bowl and stared at the milk too long, doing that quiet math every parent does. Enough for today. Maybe enough for tomorrow. A door creaked. "Dad?" Eli Reed stepped out in an oversized hoodie, hair wild, eyes barely open. In his hands was a chunk of cardboard and wires held together with tape, like something fragile and important. "I finished it," Eli mumbled. Marcus crouched, instantly softer. "Finished what?" Eli held it up like a trophy, a homemade circuit, battery pack, copper tape, tiny LED, a paperclip switch. He pressed the switch. The light flickered, then steadied. Marcus's throat tightened with a pride that almost hurt. "That's my guy," Marcus said. "That's incredible." Eli squinted at the LED. "Mr. Patel said if it flickers, it means the connection's weak." Marcus nodded. "That's right." Eli sniffed the cardboard and made a face. "It smells weird." Marcus leaned in, sniffed too. Faint sharpness. "Probably the battery," Marcus said. Eli's eyes brightened like he was stepping into a secret world. "What does ozone smell like?" Marcus froze for half a beat. "Ozone?" Eli nodded. "When electricity jumps, it makes ozone, like after lightning." For a second, Marcus wasn't in Queens. He was in another life, years ago, back when he'd apprenticed in building maintenance, back when he knew the language of panels and breakers and load transfers, back when he'd learned that buildings talk, not with words, with lights, with sound, with smell. "Ozone smells sharp," Marcus said carefully. "Metallic, like the air got cleaned too hard." Eli smiled. "That sounds cool." Marcus forced a smile back. "It's not always cool. Sometimes it's a warning." Eli looked down at his circuit again, suddenly serious. "Like a warning before something breaks?" Marcus kissed the top of his son's head. "Yeah," he said softly. "Like that." Later, when Marcus locked the apartment door and walked toward the subway, he carried 2 weights in his chest. One was responsibility. The other was fear. Because being a single father meant you couldn't afford to be wrong. And being a poor man meant the world punished you even when you were right. Hale Global Tower rose out of Midtown like a blade of glass. It was a smart building. AI-managed elevators, biometric access, security doors that clicked open like the building recognized your bloodline. Marcus wore a uniform that didn't belong in that world, but he wore it anyway. At the security desk, Douglas Price, head of security, slid Marcus a clipboard without looking up. "Night shift's yours," Douglas said. "And Reed, no hero stuff." Marcus kept his face neutral. "Yes, sir." Douglas tapped the clipboard. "We've got a board event tomorrow. CEO's been tense. Everyone's tense, so I don't want alarms. I don't want suspicions. I don't want you chasing ghosts." Marcus nodded again. But something in him, some old part that remembered wires and sparks, stayed awake. Because buildings didn't need ghosts to die. They just needed one weak connection. Around 8:40 p.m., the VIP doors at the lobby slid open, silent as a thought. Victoria Hale walked in. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She moved like the building belonged to her because it did. Her coat was dark wool, tailored, flawless. Her expression was controlled exhaustion. Marcus stepped forward like protocol demanded. "Good evening, Ms. Hale." She didn't answer. She passed him, and Marcus caught it. That smell, sharp, clean, metallic, ozone, not faint, not imaginary. The kind of ozone you smell after a transformer hiccups, after a spark bites the air. Marcus's eyes dropped, fast and respectful. At the cuff of her sleeve, a smear of fine black dust, like soot. His stomach tightened. Victoria entered the private elevator. The doors slid shut, and a second later, the lobby lights, just for a heartbeat, flickered. Marcus stared at the ceiling panel, then he looked at the camera dome in the corner. Its tiny red indicator blinked twice, confused. Then everything returned to normal, like the building had swallowed its mistake. Marcus turned to the desk to Douglas. "Sir, did you smell that?" Douglas didn't look up. "Smell what?" "Ozone," Marcus said, keeping his voice low. "On Ms. Hale." Douglas finally lifted his eyes, and they were tired in the way power gets tired of being questioned. "Reed," he said slowly, "you telling me you're a bloodhound now?" Marcus held his expression steady. "No, sir." Douglas exhaled like Marcus was wasting oxygen. "She came from the garage. Could be exhaust. Could be anything. Don't start." Marcus nodded because arguing with a man like Douglas was like yelling into an elevator shaft. But the smell clung to Marcus's mind, because exhaust didn't smell like ozone, and soot on a CEO's sleeve didn't come from a clean lobby. It came from somewhere else, somewhere lower, somewhere most people in suits never had to touch. Not long after, Marcus crossed paths with Maya Chen, the building's facilities engineer, near a service corridor. She carried a tablet and a set of keys that looked heavy enough to anchor a ship. "Hey," Marcus said. "Maya, quick question." She glanced up, friendly but hurried. "If it's about the coffee machine again, I swear it's not my fault." Marcus almost smiled. "Not coffee, power." Maya slowed. "What about it?" Marcus hesitated, then decided he'd rather look stupid than stay quiet. "Have you smelled ozone anywhere tonight?" Maya's eyebrows lifted. "That's oddly specific," she said. Marcus's voice dropped. "Ms. Hale, her coat smelled like it?" Maya's humor faded a notch. "That shouldn't happen." "Exactly." Maya glanced down the hall like she suddenly remembered something she didn't want to remember. "We had a generator test scheduled this afternoon," she said. "It got moved." "Moved by who?" Marcus asked. Maya's mouth tightened. "By someone higher than me." Marcus felt the building hum under his feet, not in sound, in meaning. He watched Maya walk away, and for the first time that night, Marcus didn't feel like a security guard. He felt like what he used to be, a man who understood that systems fail for reasons, and sometimes the reason is a person. There are rules in buildings like Hale Global Tower. Written rules, unwritten rules, and the most important unwritten rule was this. People like Marcus were not supposed to go looking. They were supposed to stand where they were told, smile when spoken to, and be invisible when not needed. But around 10:15 p.m., Marcus saw something that made his skin tighten. A man in a technician jacket moved through the service corridor by the freight elevator. He wore a badge, yes, but the lanyard was too new, too clean, and his eyes didn't move like someone who belonged. He moved like someone counting steps. Marcus didn't chase him. He followed at a distance, quiet, professional, controlled. The man swiped into a restricted stairwell that led down to the lower levels. Marcus stared at the door. He was not authorized for B2 mechanical without escort. Douglas's voice echoed in his head, "No hero stuff." Then Eli's voice echoed louder, "If it flickers, the connection's weak." Marcus exhaled once and stepped through. The descent down the service stairs felt like moving through the building's spine. It got colder, louder. Not with people, but with machinery. When Marcus reached sub-basement B2, he felt it immediately. The air was wrong. The smell was stronger, ozone, and beneath it, something uglier, warm plastic, like insulation thinking about burning. A metal door ahead bore a sign, "Power transfer, authorized personnel only." Marcus moved closer. He heard it then, soft but unmistakable. Ch, ch, tiny electrical chatter. His radio crackled as if it hated being down here. Marcus lifted it. "Maya," he said quietly. "You in the building?" A pause, then her voice, clipped by interference. "Yeah, what's up?" "I'm on B2, Marcus said. "Near the transfer room. Something's wrong." "Marcus, why are you down there?" Maya asked sharply. "Because I smell ozone," Marcus said. "And it's not a coincidence." Maya's breath hit the mic. "Don't go in alone." Marcus stared at the door, then footsteps behind him. He turned, heart jumping. Douglas Price stood there like a judge who'd been waiting. "Read," Douglas said, voice low and dangerous. "What did I say?" Marcus didn't flinch. "I saw someone down here." Douglas's eyes narrowed. "And you decided to play detective?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "I decided not to ignore a warning." Douglas stepped closer. "Your job is to obey. You want to keep your job? You walk back upstairs, now." Marcus looked at Douglas, then at the door. Then he thought of Eli's circuit, how it flickered before it steadied, how the weak connection announced itself before it failed. Marcus swallowed. "Sir," he said carefully, "if I'm wrong, you can write me up. You can fire me. But if I'm right—" Douglas cut him off. "You are not paid to be right." And that sentence, cold, simple, final, was exactly why Marcus couldn't back away. Not tonight. Not with that smell in the air. Not with the building whispering in sparks. Maya met Marcus outside the transfer room 15 minutes later, keys jangling, face tense. "You're going to get yourself killed," she muttered. Marcus didn't smile. Not planning on it. Maya knelt by the door's access panel, ran her tablet over the system. Her face shifted. "What?" Marcus asked. Maya's eyes moved fast across the screen. "There was an access swipe here earlier." "By who?" Maya hesitated, then she turned the tablet to him. "Victoria Hale, privileged access." Marcus's stomach dropped. "She came down here," he whispered. Maya's voice was tight. "Or someone used her credentials." Marcus's mind rewound like film, ozone on her coat, soot at her sleeve, the flicker in the lobby. "Can you open it?" Marcus asked. Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I don't like this." The lock clicked, the door swung inward, and heat kissed Marcus's face. Inside was a maze of panels, switches, thick cables like veins. And on the far side, near the main transfer switch, something didn't belong. A small device clipped onto the panel edge, black, glossy, too clean. Maya stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "That's not ours," she said. Marcus leaned in, careful not to touch. "Could it stop the generator from starting?" he asked. Maya's lips pressed into a line. "If it's a relay disruptor, yeah, it could break the start sequence. It could confuse the system, make it think it's unsafe to engage." Marcus stared at it. "Then the building goes dark," he said. Maya nodded once, grim. "Exactly." Marcus's radio hissed again. This time Douglas's voice cut through. "Reed, Chen, CEO wants to speak to you, now." Maya and Marcus exchanged a look, and Marcus felt the weight of what came next. Because the most dangerous part wasn't the device, it was the person who put it there. Victoria Hale waited in a private conference room high above the city, glass walls revealing Manhattan like a kingdom of lights. She stood near the window, phone in hand, posture perfect even under stress. Grant Mercer, the COO, hovered nearby with the polite stillness of a man who always wanted to be seen as helpful. Victoria's eyes landed on Marcus like he was a stain on the carpet. Douglas spoke first. "Ms. Hale, Reed's been—" Marcus interrupted softly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's an issue in the transfer room." Victoria's expression didn't change. "An issue?" "Yes," Marcus said. "A device, not part of the system. It could disable emergency power." Grant's voice slid in smooth. "With all respect, Ms. Hale, this is a facilities matter. Security shouldn't be alarming you with theories." Marcus kept his eyes on Victoria. "It's not a theory. I smelled ozone on your coat earlier." That got her attention, barely. She tilted her head. "You smelled my coat." Marcus felt the room's judgment press down on him. He pushed through anyway. "Ozone and soot on your sleeve, like you'd been near electrical arcing." Grant chuckled lightly, like this was almost charming. "We're going to start running the company by smells?" Victoria's gaze stayed on Marcus, sharp and appraising. "If there's a problem," she said, "Maya would have flagged it." Maya's voice was calm but firm. "Ms. Hale, I did. My test was rescheduled." Victoria's eyes flicked to Grant. Grant didn't blink. "I advised postponing non-critical maintenance. Tomorrow's board event." Victoria's jaw tightened. "So you decided?" Grant smiled politely. "I suggested." A silence fell. Marcus stepped into it. "Ma'am," he said, "please. Let us lock down the transfer room, freeze access logs, and restrict elevator operations until we verify the system." Victoria's voice turned cold again, protective of authority. "You want me to disrupt operations because a guard has a feeling." Marcus's chest rose. Then he said the most honest thing he had. "I want you alive," he said quietly, "and I want everyone in this building safe. That's it." Victoria stared at him for a long second and made her choice. "No," she said, "we're not panicking the building tonight." Marcus felt it like a door shutting. Grant's smile warmed by half a degree. Douglas exhaled in relief, like order had been restored. And Marcus swallowed the helplessness down. Because there was one more thing his fatherhood had taught him. If an adult won't listen, you don't stop caring. You just get smarter. It happened at 11:47 p.m., not with a bang, with a blink. 1 second the building was alive, lights, servers, elevators, breathing people up and down like blood. The next second, everything went dark. The smart building became a dead one. Emergency lights tried to engage. They flickered, fought, then stuttered into failure. Elevators stopped mid-shaft. Doors locked in confused half-states. The radio network fractured into static and chopped voices. Marcus ran, not in a heroic way, in a someone-has-to-move way. He sprinted through the lower service corridors, found Maya already at a panel, fingers flying. "It's not switching," she snapped. "The generator's not taking load." "Device," Marcus said, breathless. Maya's eyes hardened. "Yeah, someone wanted the backup to fail." A shout echoed from above. People scared. People trapped. And somewhere in that chaos, Marcus caught a glimpse of Victoria being escorted by Grant and Douglas toward the private executive floors, toward control, toward safety, toward the illusion of it. Marcus pushed past them. "Ms. Hale," he called. Victoria turned, her face lit only by a phone flashlight. The cold control in her expression was cracking at the edges. "Reed," she snapped, "not now." "It's exactly now," Marcus said. "You can't go toward the mechanical access corridor." Grant stepped in smoothly. "Marcus, stand down. We're handling this." Marcus ignored him. He leaned close enough that only Victoria could hear. "I smelled ozone on you because you were close to the source," he said. "That source is active again." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Active?" Marcus nodded once. "Arcing, live fault. If you touch the wrong door, the wrong handle—" Douglas cut in. "That's enough." Victoria's jaw clenched. She looked past Marcus toward the dark corridor. She wanted control more than she wanted comfort, and control, in her world, meant moving forward. So she went. Marcus followed. The hallway on the 44th floor swallowed them. Glass walls, black city outside, red exit signs pulsing like warning beacons. Victoria approached the door at the end. the one that led to the mechanical access corridor. Marcus's radio was dead now, mostly static, his lungs burned. He stepped in front of her. "Ms. Hale," he said, voice raw. "Please stay still. Don't open that door." Victoria's face tightened, offended even in crisis. "You're just security," she said. "Do you think you know better than I do?" And then she reached. Her fingers brushed the handle. Marcus smelled the ozone surge like a wave. "Don't—" Victoria pulled. The tower shut off again, harder, deeper, as if the building's last emergency breath had been stolen. The exit signs blinked and died. Darkness slammed into them. For one terrifying heartbeat, Marcus felt Victoria's presence shift, human, suddenly vulnerable. Then the thin, vicious sound. Ch, ch, ch. Marcus grabbed her arm and yanked her back. "Stay behind me," he ordered, no longer asking. Victoria stumbled, shocked. "What?" "Quiet," Marcus said. "Listen." In the black, the sound of electricity hunting grew sharper. Marcus aimed his flashlight low, sweeping the floor. He saw it, a faint blue-white lick of light at the bottom seam of the door, a leak of arcing energy, like the building was bleeding lightning. Maya's voice shouted from behind them, distant but urgent. "Marcus, that corridor feeds the riser. If it's faulting, it could backfeed the whole floor." Marcus backed Victoria away, step by step. Grant's voice came from the dark, too calm. "We need to move, Ms. Hale." Marcus turned his flashlight toward the sound. Grant stood a few yards away, face half-lit, expression composed, too composed. Marcus stared at him, and for the first time, the suspicion wasn't a thought, it was certainty. "You knew," Marcus said quietly. Grant's smile flickered. "This is not the time for accusations." "It's always the time," Marcus said, "when the truth is what keeps people alive." Grant's eyes narrowed a fraction. "You're a guard, Reed. You don't understand what's at stake." Marcus's voice dropped, low and deadly calm, not violent, just absolute. "I understand what's at stake," he said. "I have a kid at home who thinks the world makes sense." Silence. Then Victoria spoke, voice quieter now. "Grant, what did you do?" Grant didn't answer. He didn't have to, because the building answered instead. A distant mechanical groan rolled up through the bones of Hale Global Tower, like a generator trying to start and failing on purpose. Maya's flashlight beam swung as she ran to them. "We can bypass it manually," she said, breathless. "But we have to get to B2 and cut that device off the transfer switch." Victoria's eyes flashed. "Do it." Grant stepped forward. "Ms. Hale, protocol." Victoria's voice turned to steel. "Move." Grant hesitated, and that half-second hesitation was all Marcus needed to see what Grant really was, a man who didn't like being told no, not by anyone. Not even the woman he'd been waiting to replace. They moved fast, down stairwells, through service corridors, flashlights dancing on concrete walls. Marcus led, because Marcus had spent years walking through the parts of buildings rich people never saw. Basements, back corridor, ores, the places where power lived. As they reached B2, the air grew hotter, ozone thickened. Maya shoved the door open and rushed to the transfer room panel, hands steady despite her breath shaking. "There," she said, pointing at the foreign device. Marcus crouched beside it, careful. Maya grabbed insulated gloves, tools. "We cut it clean," she murmured. "If we spike it, we arc." Victoria stood behind them, silent now, watching like a woman watching her own heartbeat. Grant lingered near the door, too far from the danger. Marcus noticed. He always noticed. Maya's hands moved, a snip, a click. The device came loose like a parasite pulled from skin. The generator sequence stuttered, then caught. A deep, alive vibration rolled through the floor. Lights flickered in the corridor outside, weak at first, then stronger, then steadier. The building inhaled, and for the first time that night, Hale Global Tower felt like it had a pulse again. Maya exhaled, laughing once like she couldn't help it. "We've got backup," she said. Victoria's shoulders loosened by a millimeter. Marcus looked at Grant. Grant's face was unreadable, until he realized Victoria was looking at him too. Victoria held out her hand. "Give me your access badge," she said softly. Grant's eyes widened just a fraction. "Victoria?" She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Now," she said. Grant stared, calculating. Then, with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes, he handed it over. Marcus watched the moment like a camera zooming in. A man losing the smallest object. and realizing it was the first domino. The official story that hit internal memos the next day was clean. An unauthorized device caused a disruption in the building's transfer system. The issue has been contained. The real story was messier, because the real story included a man in a suit trying to turn darkness into opportunity. It included rescheduled tests, privileged credential misuse, and a shutdown that accidentally would have happened at the perfect time, right before a board event, when chaos could rewrite hierarchy. Investigators came. Logs were pulled. Footage was recovered from redundant storage Maya insisted on keeping, just in case. Grant Mercer's smile didn't survive the evidence. He was removed quietly at first, then not so quietly. And in the weeks that followed, Hale Global Tower ran smoother. Not because it became smarter, but because the people inside it learned to respect the warning signs, including the smallest ones, especially the ones they used to ignore. Victoria Hale called Marcus into her office on a Tuesday evening. Daylight poured across a room that looked like money made physical. Marcus stood straight in his uniform, hands calm in front of him, heart pounding anyway. Victoria didn't waste time. "I owe you an apology," she said. Marcus blinked, surprised, not because she was incapable, but because power rarely admitted error. Victoria continued, "You warned me. I dismissed you. And if you hadn't, I would have walked into a live fault." Marcus's throat tightened. "I wasn't trying to disrespect you, ma'am." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." She slid a folder across the desk. Marcus didn't touch it immediately. "What is this?" he asked. "A promotion," Victoria said. "Security liaison for facilities and emergency systems. Paid training, certification, benefits." Marcus stared at the folder like it might vanish if he believed in it too hard. Victoria's voice softened slightly, the frost thinning. "People like you keep buildings alive," she said. "I forgot that." Marcus swallowed. Then he said the only honest thing he could. "I didn't do it for the building," he said. "I did it because my son asked me what ozone smelled like." Victoria's eyes flicked up. "And what did you tell him?" Marcus smiled, small and tired and real. "That it's a warning," he said, "before something breaks." Victoria nodded once, as if she'd learned something more valuable than any report. "Then you taught him the truth," she said. That night, Marcus came home with the folder under his arm like it was fragile. Eli was asleep on the couch, face turned toward his little circuit board on the coffee table. The LED glowed steady. Marcus stood there for a long time just watching, because sometimes healing didn't feel like fireworks. Sometimes healing felt like a light that stopped flickering. Marcus knelt, pulled a blanket over his son, and whispered more to himself than to Eli. "We reconnected the circuit, buddy." Outside, the city kept shining. Inside, the apartment felt warmer than it had in a long time. Not because the radiator changed, but because Marcus Reed finally believed, just a little, that the world could change too. If you've ever been dismissed because of your position, because of your uniform, your title, your accent, your skin, remember this: sometimes the first person to see the truth is the one standing closest to the dark. And if this story touched something in you, leave a comment with one moment in your life when you trusted your warning signs, even when nobody else did.